Well, hey everyone, welcome to week 2 of your Decide to Thrive small groups. We are so excited that you're here today. Today, we are very, very honored to have a special guest all the way from our Atlanta South location, Miss Leah Johnson. Leah, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, hey guys. Yes, I am super excited to be here. Well, technically, I'm not there in Louisiana. I am filming this live from our campus in Atlanta. And I am just excited to jump on in for week 2 of our Decide to Thrive series. So thank you, Christian.
This week, we are talking about the relationship decision. We're talking about how we were actually designed to do life in relationship with other believers. You know, a study actually showed that there are 3 barriers to people experiencing healthy relationships. There is independence, this feeling that I can do everything by myself, I don't need help. Insecurity, which is the feeling that, man, if people see the real me, what will they think? How will they respond? What will they think of me if they see my flaws? And finally, isolation, just slowly becoming more and more isolated, removed from people around us. And so as we talk about the importance of relationships, Leah, I would just love to hear maybe some of your thoughts on the topic.
Yeah, for sure. I know personally, I have dealt with barriers such as those that stood in the way of me experiencing healthy relationships in my life. And as you were talking, and in some scriptures that I applied in my life at that time, I have 2 of them. And the first one, it's Genesis 2:18. I'm reminded that it is not good for a man to be alone. Like, we were designed to be in relationship. And the second verse that came into my mind is 1 Peter 2:5. In 1 Peter 2:5, it talks all about these living stones being built into a spiritual house. You see, I don't know much about construction or building, but what I do know is you cannot build something with one piece. And that scripture reminds me that we need each other. If we're going to build this house, if we're going to build our lives on a solid foundation, we need people around us to help us build that. We cannot do it alone. And so, like I said earlier, I've experienced those barriers. In those times, one thing that I remember is that when I actually allowed people into my life, that's when a shift began to happen. But when I was all alone and just blocking everybody out of my life, I wasn't able to experience the fullness that God had for me by myself.
That's so good, Leah. On that topic, kind of as we continue to talk about the relationship decision, what would you say to someone maybe who's nervous or kind of unsure of how to even begin creating these relationships? Maybe just some practical steps on how they can find those relationships, find people to do life with.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, I remember growing up, even through middle school and high school, I always felt like I didn't have a great example of what healthy relationships look like. Maybe that's you. Maybe you don't have great examples of godly, healthy relationships in your life. First of all, there are amazing leaders here at Church the King Youth that want to walk alongside of you. The journey could seem a little scary. It's kind of putting yourself out there and opening yourself up to a friendship. That could be so hard. It was really intimidating for me. But I just have a few points of practical steps of how to walk in a healthy relationship or relationships. And the first one is this: it's be intentional. Be intentional. Relationships do not happen by accident. At least healthy ones. They do not happen by accident. They take work. They take pursuing each other. They take not just standing by and waiting for the other person to reach out to you, but sometimes it takes hey man, just sending a simple text hey man, needing a friend right now, or hey girl, hey, let's hang out, I need a friend. The next one, which was the hardest for me, is be vulnerable. I remember I had some crazy stuff going on in my life in high school, and I just felt so alone, so isolated. And I remember thinking, if I opened up to my leaders or my friends about all of this that's going on in my life right now, what are they going to think about me? And then I remember having this conversation actually with one of my leaders and just spilling everything out on the table and saying, hey, this is what I'm going through. And I remember in that moment of just vulnerability and transparency and looking at her, and the first thing that came out of her mouth was, "I'm so proud of you." She didn't say, "What's wrong with you? Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're going through that." No, she said, "I'm proud of you." Transparency, it's hard, but it's such a step that helps us on the inside, but also it grows us closer in our relationship. The next one is be a servant leader. Be a servant leader. Be quick to put on your gloves and help a friend out. Be quick to say, "Hey man, how can I serve you? I know you're going through a crazy season right now." Sometimes it's really easy to think about us and what we need at the moment. But sometimes when we look outwardly and say, "Hey, like, how can I serve my friend?" But one thing that I love, Jesus set a beautiful example of being a servant leader with his disciples. He was fully God. He was fully man, but he was quick to wash the disciples' feet. He was quick to serve them and love them. This is such a great example of how we can serve. I mean, I'm not saying you have to go rub your brother's feet, but what I am saying is be quick to ask how you can be a servant leader to your friends. And the next one is this: be forgiving. Be forgiving. Friendships, healthy relationships are full of imperfect people, including you. Be kind and compassionate. Forgive each other just as Christ, God, forgave you. The next one, I said this a little bit about this earlier. Make the first move. Don't wait for your friends to reach out to you. If you need a friend in the moment, reach out, send a text, make a phone call, FaceTime, Snapchat, do whatever y'all do. Be quick to reach out and make the first move. Practice active listening. Be quick to listen. Let's try to be a little more interested than we are trying to be interesting. Let's be a good listener. Sometimes our friends just need us to sit by their side and say, "Hey man, what's going on? I'm here to listen." Even if we don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. But just being there, being present in our relationships. I know that this journey of being vulnerable and stepping into a way of doing healthy relationships, it takes work. Sometimes it's really hard. It's easier said than done sometimes, but when you put the work in to having healthy, godly relationships, it's so worth it.
Wow, man. Well, hey, Leah, thank you so much for sharing that. I think that is a lot of really valuable insights. And so for all of you joining us today, we hope you have a great time in your small groups as you continue to talk about the relationship decision, and we'll see you next week.